sitting as we speak. And she was only in service for about 10 years, which is a pretty short period of time for a Navy ship, but you know, it was just a matter of bad timing, really. You know, in 1959, the Americans and Russians, the Cold War was starting to heat up. Submarines were the thing. And this ship wasn't built for that. It wasn't built to chase submarines. It was built to slug it out with other big ships. So she really just outlived her usefulness, basically. But she was a beast, and because of the fact that all of the battleships had been decommissioned by that time, when the Salem was decommissioned, she was the largest warship in the world besides aircraft carriers. Her 8-inch guns forward and aft were the biggest ship-mounted guns on the planet when she was decommissioned. A couple of battleships that dwarf her, but at the time, she was as big as it got. And she had a reputation that was such that she was actually supposed to be decommissioned in 1958. But when she was in the Med, there was a coup in Lebanon, and at the time, Prime Minister of Lebanon asked the President of the United States to please leave Salem in the Med, because he felt that as long as Salem and her Marine detachment were here, then he would be safe and his country would be stable. And that's exactly what happened. So she stayed an extra 7 months coming home and being decommissioned. So the Salem never saw any combat. And I always say that I would be shocked if there was ever a naval ship in history that never saw as Salem saw. And she was in the Mediterranean in 1953. You see there's a board over there with some pictures. There was a very bad earthquake on the Greek Ionian Islands. And Salem being there, she was basically the hospital. And all of those people who were hurt in the earthquake, for the most part, were brought. There was an Israeli frigate there as well, but for the most part, all of those people who were injured in the earthquake were brought aboard Salem for treatment. The number is kind of unclear. I think, you know, at the time they were more interested in getting people aboard the ship and treating them and getting new people aboard the ship than they were counting. So the numbers really are kind of unclear, but there were a lot of deaths, along with 13 or 14 births. Shortly after she left the Med, and she was only there for about 4 days. You know, that's not the kind of mission she was prepared for food or even fresh water to stay there very long. So after about 4 days, they brought her home. She went to the Brooklyn Naval Shipyard, and the ship next to her had an explosion. It was a light cruiser that was designed very similarly to the Salem. So what that means is when that particular magazine exploded, it took the hospital with it. So all of those guys were brought aboard Salem for treatment, and a lot of those guys didn't make it either. And by an amazing coincidence, about 2 years later, in August, I think, of 1956, she was at sea off the coast of Europe when a destroyer, you don't remember the name of it?
I don't.
I'll tell you in a second. There was a destroyer steaming alongside of her, and they were doing gunnery practice. They were shooting at towed targets, and one of the anti-aircraft mounts exploded. There were 11 guys hurt in that explosion, and a lot of those guys were brought aboard Salem for treatment for very severe burns. So as I said, you know, she never saw any combat, but there were a lot of people died aboard this ship. And I promise you that a lot of them are still there. As we walk around tonight, we're going to walk down here, we're going to go to the surgery, which is an extremely active area. We're going to go a little bit further down, we're going to go to the Chief Petty Officer's Mess, which is another very active area. We'll go down to the mess decks where we were talking about before, all the way out. And then as we come up, we got a couple of other stops on the way up. We'll spend a little time in the hospital. We'll turn off all these lights because this is a very active room as well. And we'll go all the way forward to the anchor windlass room, which is the most forward room in the ship, and the only place where there's been a death since the ship has been here in Quincy. So if you're ready, when we head aft, we'll start walking around and we'll turn off. Sorry?
Down below.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit cool, yeah, 'cause you got hatches open.
That's creepy.
So, I was telling you, this is the surgery, and one of the, in the prep room here. This isn't gonna get anybody to talk to us. We have a, you know, I don't know how much you guys know about this stuff. If I'm telling you things you already know, I apologize, but when you have, Never been here. Only the last time.
Watch your step. Spooky.
We've heard him barking, and we always, you know, we kind of came to the conclusion it's a German Shepherd. I don't know why, just because it's a deep bark. It sounds like a big dog. But the only person who ever says that they saw the dog was a woman who was in the barber shop and said she was looking out, and the dog walked by. No. So for years, every time I came aboard, if I was on board for 10 minutes, I brought a trap camera, like a game camera. And I turned that chair so that it was looking out the door and put the game camera. But after a few years, I kind of gave up on it. I'm not entirely sure she ever actually saw the damn dog myself. But.
Don't touch the trays. Hopefully they serve us some food.
They have muffins in there.
It's amazing. Watch your step.
Yep, step.
Step over here.
What?
Oh, there's a dead body.
So for a mess, we just walked through number 1 mess, number 2 mess, number 3 mess. This is where the crew ate. This is actually where I was talking about earlier. This is where my buddy hangs around. So we'll spend a little bit of time in here later on, and then that's where those folks were that night that I was talking about. We'll hang around here. We'll go down to the ship's library is here. We'll go down there for a little while as well. So one of the interesting things about this room now, when I was talking earlier about the first time I spoke to that guy, and as I said, nothing happened that night. It was, you know, I don't think he really paid me. Never mind. But about a year later, I guess, I was here with another group, and I was in this room with a woman, a sensitive, and one another investigator. And they were sitting here, and I was standing, I don't know, somewhere in this neighborhood here. And we were just kind of waiting, which is what you do a lot of the time. And at some point she said, okay, he's here now. And no sooner did she say that, my back, the only analogy I can draw is that maybe 20 years ago, there was a Titanic exhibit that came to Boston, and they had a big piece of an iceberg there, and I had leaned against it. And that was the only other time I can ever remember my back being so cold. And she said, And I didn't say anything, but this woman, Kelly, said, she said, and he is right behind you. So we were just kind of, we were just kind of waiting still. And then Kelly said, and the funny thing is, he's laughing at us. He thinks we are the silliest thing he's ever seen.